In order to talk about creating an artificial intelligence, in order to talk about how intelligent this intelligence will be, and whether it will be more intelligent than humans, and whether humans can become immortal because of this artificial intelligence. Before doing all that, we have to talk about the philosophical issue of human nature and human identity. Now, the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to do right now is not the same as you watched during one of my lectures. This one is specifically addressing the comparison between religion and transhumanism. So let me begin. And let me remind you of the fundamental philosophical assumptions of transhumanism. The fundamental philosophical assumption of this movement is that the functioning of the human brain is based on the same principles and is subordinated to the same procedures as the operation of a highly sophisticated computer with advanced capabilities. Now, this philosophical assumption was criticized by various philosophers and by some scientists. But even after this criticism, which is quite argumentative and severe, most people who deal with artificial intelligence still assume that they can recreate human brain by making more and more sophisticated computers. So let's take this claim at its face value, and let's proceed from this claim. Now, the most important thing in assessing this claim and assessing the possibility of artificial intelligence approaching the complexity of the human brain is the philosophical theories of human identity. As I said, the main question that we are dealing with is, who am I? Who are we? There are two basic theories about that. The first one, the soul theory. The soul theory was advanced by religious teachings. And I'm not talking about one specific religion, but most religions, if not all religions, practically all religions, believe that a person's nature is non-physical and non-material. It can be called soul, spirit, Atman, Anatman in Buddhism, etc. But most religions believe that this non-material entity can survive and will survive the death of the body. The second theory that we have is a theory that comes from science. The person who first formulated this theory was an English philosopher, John Locke, in the 17th century, and this theory is known as psychological continuity theory. According to this view, a human being is essentially his or her memories and ability to reflect on oneself. That's what Ray Kurzweil, one of the major spokesmen of transhumanism, calls the overall psychological configuration of a person or their pattern. Psychological continuity theory is the working hypothesis of transhumanist thinkers and of people who are working with artificial intelligence. According to this theory, this pattern, or our psychological pattern that constitutes our unique personality, is attached to the biological platform that we call our body, but it is relatively independent of this platform. And it could be transferred to another platform, let's say a computer platform or some kind of machine platform or technical platform. And by being transferred, this pattern, this human essence can survive for a long time or become practically immortal. Practical immortality is when you survive for a very long time, like 1 million years. That's enough, I think. So let me check. First of all, is the sound okay? Do you hear me well? Someone, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Ksenia. And you see what I see: theories of human identity, soul theory, psychological continuity theory, right?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, good. So moving on. Here comes Ray Kurzweil, one of the leading spokesmen for transhumanism, and frankly, one of my favorite American thinkers. I may have told you that I follow this guy. He's a true genius. He's called Contemporary Edison. He got his first award, I think, after he graduated from school for a paper in which he proposed his solution to how the brain is structured, how the mind is structured. Extremely bright man who invented many things that we use now without even knowing that these are his inventions. For example, he invented the keyboard. He invented the special machine for the blind so that they could, the machine that transforms text into speech for the blind. So a lot of great inventions. But his passion, his real passion, is to recreate the brain and to make human beings practically immortal. So here, his research is on the borderline between science and religion. Now he's in his 60s. He is trying to sustain his organism in such a way that he lives long enough to see the singularity and to participate in it. Singularity, is a term which means the merging of human biology with computer technology. When we become one, in other words, when our biological pattern or our biological personality is transferred to or is merged with another platform. So he's working for singularity again, as he's in his 60s. He claims that his body is working like he's in his 50s. And he's a little bit crazy about that. Maybe not a little bit, but quite crazy. Because when he was young, he took, I saw several interviews with him, and he told the journalists that he was using 250 vitamins per day, in order to keep his body young. But after a certain time, he decided to slow down, and now he takes only 150 vitamins per day, really slowing down. 150 vitamins per day, or supplements. Anyway, I think he's heading to a big disappointment. Now, I would like to discuss his arguments for singularity. These are the philosophical arguments. And these arguments have two parts. The first part is about evolution. The second part is about the so-called two thought experiments. I think this is the most important part of this week's studies. We will begin with evolution, but let me answer the question by Anne Lee. What do you think about his expertise? Yes, he was working as a Google executive, but I think he did not retire, but now he's not working at Google. I'm not sure. As for his expertise, look, he's a genius. That's his expertise. On top of being an inventor, on top of being a scientist, on top of being a Google executive, he is also a best-selling author. Buy any of his books, and you will see how brilliant this guy is. Obviously, he is extremely competent. I do not doubt his expertise as a scientist, but I do question his expertise as a philosopher and a logical thinker. These are two different kinds of expertise. So let me illustrate that based on the arguments for singularity. So here is the first argument. The evolution is efficient but extremely slow. Now remember, I organized this argument in the form of a syllogism. A syllogism is a form of an argument in which you have several premises, usually the major premise and the minor premise. And if the major and the minor premises are true, then the conclusion is 100% true. But if you find any shortcomings in any of the premises, then the conclusion is not true. So let's evaluate his first argument. The first premise is as follows. The evolution is efficient but extremely slow. Now, since I'm doing this video presentation, I'm not going to ask you, what do you think? I will tell you what I think, and then at the end of the presentation, you will summarize your thoughts and reactions about that. So the evolution is efficient but extremely slow. I think he's right. I think this premise is right. Yes, the evolution is efficient because, after all, as a result of the evolution, human beings appeared on Earth. It is extremely slow because we know from science it took hundreds of thousands, maybe million years. So I agree with number one. Number two, given the long period of time it achieved its results, evolution's IQ is only slightly greater than zero, when zero stands for truly arbitrary behavior. Arbitrary behavior is behavior with no goals. So, it's like throwing the dice. If the evolution worked like that, no matter how long it takes, it will not have achieved any results. So therefore, Kurzweil argues that evolution has some IQ. Now, I would disagree with that proposition, because evolution is a process, and a process cannot have an IQ. An IQ is a characteristic of either a human being or a machine. So some entity that represents the intellect. Evolution as a process is devoid of any intellect. So I would slightly disagree with premise number 2. However, I agree that as a result of the evolution, something was achieved. Yes. The third premise, yet evolution created human intelligence with higher IQ. Now, on the surface, the third premise is right, because yes, as a result of the evolution, we have human intelligence with high IQ. However, this third premise already contains within itself the argument that evolution, the process of evolution, can create something. While there is another way to look at the process of evolution, which I will explain later. So I will disagree with premise number 3, and later I will explain to you why. And therefore, his conclusion, hence evolution can create something higher than itself, for me is wrong. For him, it is right. Because we observe that the process of evolution has created human beings that have higher IQ than the evolution itself, which doesn't seem to be intelligent at all. So, are you with me? Give me something. Yeah, chat is fine. All right. Now, let us move on to the second argument for evolution. Now, if you accept the conclusion of the first argument, which I don't, that evolution has created something higher than itself. Personally, I believe that this statement is absurd. Evolution has created something higher than itself. Well, later on I will deconstruct the statement, but if you accept this as true, then the second premise is that human intelligence is part of evolution, which is true. The third premise is that human intelligence works at a much higher pace, which is also true. So if you accept premise number 1, and since premise number 2 and premise number 3 are true, therefore you will accept the conclusion. Therefore, human intelligence can create machines that are higher than human intelligence. So my personal take on these arguments is as follows. I do not accept the first argument, and I do not accept the first premise of the second argument. However, I do accept the conclusion. Human intelligence can create machines that are higher than human intelligence, that have intelligence that is higher than human intelligence. However, I think that the conclusion is right for different reasons. Now, let me explain why and what does this mean. Now, after talking about Kurzweil, let me talk about the religious view of human nature. According to any religion, again, I'm talking about Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, etc. Here, all religions agree. Human nature has two components, material and spiritual, which we usually call body and soul. We may also say that human character includes the innate part, the inherited part, and the acquired aspect. So, in other words, what you inherit from the divine, your soul, which is not material, what you inherit from the parents, which is material, and what you acquire by education. Now, the most important part. What is the connection between body and soul? We often say that the soul is contained in the body. And when the body dies, the soul kind of leaves the body. But this is nothing but a metaphor. Human mind is the power of the spirit. The spirit is as the lamp, and the mind is the light that shines from it. The mind is the perfection of the spirit and the necessary attribute of the spirit. However, the mind, as we see it in human beings, is a reflection of the spirit in the body. In other words, the mind is the interface between the spirit and the body. So let's imagine that the spirit is the lamp, the body is the mirror, and the mind is the reflection of the light in that mirror. Okay? So, according to religious worldview, what we know as the mind, something with which we identify ourselves, is on the one hand the reflection of the spirit in your body. In other words, it has bodily components. On the other hand, its source is not material. It's not bodily. So when the body dies, when the mirror crushes, the reflection disappears, human body becomes dead and deteriorates, while the human spirit still retains the power of the mind, which is simply not available through the body. Are you with me? I need some confirmation, my friends, that you are not asleep, because this is a very, actually a sophisticated philosophical discussion. Now, let's go back to the issue of evolution and to Kurzweil's arguments and look at them from the point of view of religion. Okay, Shamar is widely awake. Kurzweil's argument about evolution rests on the empirical observation that evolution works its way from simple to complex forms and produces human intelligence that is lacking in nature. Human being, hence, seems like a product and part of evolutionary process. Human being could create an even higher intelligence and evolve into a super being with extraordinary physical and intellectual abilities. That is Kurzweil's view. Now let's compare religion. Let's compare a religious view of evolution with the scientific view of evolution. Number one, the observation about natural evolution is empirically correct, but logically confusing. Why? Because if we accept evolution on its face value, then we arrive at a conclusion that a lesser entity, in this case evolution itself, can produce something that is greater than itself. At the end of logical chain, it means that nothing can evolve into something, and that is obviously absurd. So how do we resolve this paradox, which Kurzweil takes as the truth? Now, in religious thought, Kurzweil's evolutionary paradox is resolved by distinguishing between the spiritual and material elements in human nature. The material component of humanity, which is the body, is subject to evolution. Yes, our bodies evolved from the primitive stages to the highly sophisticated, complex human body. However, the human spirit does not evolve in the same way. We have never been the spirit of the plant or the spirit of the animal. We have always been human spirits. And human spirits always existed in nature, but they existed potentially. Even if the spirit could not be detected empirically. So if we look at evolution from that perspective, we will see that material evolution does not create human intelligence, but allows it to be manifested on the physical plane of existence by producing more complex bodily organisms. Do you see the difference here between Kurzweil and religion? So evolution does not create spirits and human intelligence. In fact, the observation that material evolution leads to the emergence of human intelligence tells us that human spirit is not of material nature. Here is the argument about that in its logical form. The first premise: humans are part of the natural world. Now, this is obviously true. Number two, humans have intelligence, but the natural world as a whole lacks it. That is also true, until and unless we see some aliens. Number three, what is present in parts, meaning in humans, should also exist in the whole, meaning the universe. However, it is not so, because evolution is not an intelligent being. Conclusion, therefore, human intelligence is not part of the natural order. It comes from the spiritual world. Now, let's take a look at what time do we have? 9:50. Okay, so we have enough time. So now let's talk about Kurzweil's arguments for singularity. Now, let me remind you that singularity is this idea, transhumanist idea, that in the future we will be able to merge human biology with computer technology to the point of being one singular being, part machine, part human. So here is his first argument. Now, these are not arguments; these are thought experiments, and they are very interesting ones. So here is the first thought experiment. Let's imagine that my brain is replaced part by part with implants until there is nothing original in my brain. The question is this new person still you? You too, so to say? Or it is a different person? Now, Kurzweil believes that in this case, you still exist, except for the fact that the conclusion of this thought experiment came into contradiction with the previous thought experiment. But we will take this one as the first thought experiment. So he believes that if my brain is completely replaced by implants, now remember, implants that are 100% emulation of my brain. Emulation means 100% replica, which means that those implants, artificial implants, contain all my memories, all my feelings, all my life experience, etc., everything. So if instead of my brain I have those implants, am I the same person? Kurzweil believes that yes, I will be the same person. Now, think about this while I will show you some funny part. So this is the first argument for singularity. And this is a short animation that was prepared by one of my students.
Hey, let's do this. Not to worry, this is just a thought experiment. They replace my natural brain with the implant. The implant is 100% identical to my brain. It contains my memories, feelings, and thoughts, maybe even my subconscious. Ooh, scary. Hey, careful up there. That's my brain. Okay, that's it. Am I still the same person? Am I?
Okay, let me see what you write in the chat. Yeah, it is cute. It is cute. I agree. So let us move on to the second thought experiment. And then we will discuss them. Now, the second thought experiment is similar to the first one, but the second thought experiment comes from a different perspective. Let's assume that it is possible to scan and download a complete replica of the human brain. And this human brain then is uploaded to a computer, highly sophisticated computer. So here comes the so-called U2. And this entity, U2, is behaving exactly like you. However, it does not have your physical body. Is it really you, or is it a different person?
Okay, let's do it again. Hey, what are you doing? I need some brain too, you know? Yeah, that's better. She's uploading the full content of my brain to a computer. Hello, sir. Are you myself? Wrong, sir. You are me.
Okay. So now let's move on to explain the results of those thought experiments. Now, Kurzweil believes that in both cases, we are dealing with one and the same person. So in both thought experiments, whether you have implants, brain implants, or whether the content of your brain is uploaded into a computer, this second entity, let's call him U2, is the same person. So the same person, U2 of the first experiment, is you, no matter how counterintuitive that sounds. And this conclusion is based on Kurzweil's view on the nature of human identity, that he himself labels patternist. Now think about that. If you believe that the source of human identity is in your brain, but is relatively independent of your brain, as soon as you could copy this identity, then you basically recreate yourself in a different format. And whether this will be a brain implant or it will be a digital copy of your brain, it still will be you. Now, let me skip that. And let me now talk about those two experiments from the religious point of view. Now, according to religion, the mind is the power of the human spirit. It is not the seed of human identity. The spirit or the soul is. And here comes the crucial difference. For Kurzweil, as for the scientist, human identity is inside the brain, in the form of the mind. He believes that the mind is generated by the brain itself. However, the mind is, again, as I said, relatively independent of the brain, and we could make a copy and install it or transfer it to a different platform. By doing this, we literally transfer our own identity into a different platform. Now, if you approach the same experiments with religious perspectives, you will come to very different conclusions, because for religion, our human identity is not in the brain. It is in the spiritual world. What we have in the brain is the reflection of the spiritual world. So it is not the source, but it is the projection of our true human identity. And this projection is associated with our present body. Therefore, if we have an implant, brain implant, that is completely identical to the content of our brain, this will simply be a copy of our brain and mind, but it will not be a copy of our spirit, of our identity. It will simply be a replacement of the reflection. Okay? And if we download the content of our brain into a computer machine, we do not create a different person, a person, you too. We simply recreate the copy of the reflection of our identity, but this copy is not a person at all, because this entity lacks the spirit, the source of our identity. Now, are you with me, my friends? Because again, this distinction is very important. Please let me know, are you with me or are you in deep sleep? Yes, meaning in deep sleep. All right. So let me repeat. As far as the soul is not a material but spiritual entity, the power of the mind is also essentially spiritual and is only partially reflected on the physical plane of existence through the instrumentality of the brain. Now, if you look at the problem of artificial intelligence from those lenses, you will see the important implications of our contemporary work with artificial intelligence. Let me show you those implications. Now, according to religious worldview, the potential spiritual powers of the mind are much greater than what human reason and sense perception are capable of. Those hidden abilities are only partially expressed through human intuition, visions, dreams, which are possible due to the interconnection between material and spiritual realms. In other words, here is my main point. The problem with artificial intelligence and the scare, the fear that humans have with this whole enterprise is based on the fact that we associate ourselves with our thoughts. Now, there is nothing new with creating machines that increase our capabilities. For example, we created cars, and cars ran faster than humans. We created bulldozers. We created, many other machines that can do weightlifting, and with such weightlifting that humans would never do. But that doesn't bother us, because we do not associate our human identity with running, weightlifting, etc., with many of our abilities. But we do associate ourselves with our thinking capacities. So if we create a machine with artificial intelligence that would have mental capacities higher than we have, then we take it as an insult to our human identity. And it may seem to us that we have created something that is higher than ourselves. Now, if you look at this problem from the religious point of view, first of all, you get rid of the fear. And second, you will resolve all those paradoxes that Ray Kurzweil is talking about. The only thing you should do is you should disassociate yourself from your thought process. Because according to the religious worldview, your thought process is simply the reflection of the work of the spirit, but it is not the spirit itself. Spirit has potentials that are much greater than the work of our mind and sense perception that is related to our body. So if we assume that, then the fact, and I think that we could imagine the invention of artificial intelligence that overtakes our own. Why not? So then the invention of such a machine that is more intelligent than we are does not insult our sense of self-identity and does not scare us because we realize that the lesser entity can never create a higher entity, and the fact that we created a machine with higher intelligence means that we have capabilities that are even higher than this artificial machine we have created. In other words, our spirit has greater potentials. In fact, no manipulation with or augmentation of human intellectual abilities will affect our spiritual nature. Even the emulation of the whole human brain would imply only the capability to simulate some of our intellectual capacities. The hidden psychic powers of extrasensory perception, visions, and most importantly, revelation would continue to be inaccessible to the machine. So, in other words, the machine will not have the soul or the spirit. We could replicate some of the human reactions that will look like the machine having some kind of spirit or spiritual life, but lacking the source of the intelligence, lacking the spirit itself, the machine will never be like a human being. It will simply be a simulator of the human being. So let's imagine that our technology is capable of scanning and downloading a complete replica of the human brain. Would such a you too be really you? From a religious perspective, no, it would not. A material replica will always remain what it is, an incomplete copy of the person that is lacking the source of that person's spiritual identity. Then what if we are able to replace someone's brain with an artificial brain implant? Would that person retain his or her own original self-identity? The answer to this question from the religious point of view depends on whether the implant is capable of retaining this mysterious connection between the spiritual and material parts of the human being. And that we do not know.